So my name is Alejandra Fernandez. I got my PhD in health behavior and health education. My current role is a Post-doctoral Associate at the University of Miami, School of Nursing and Health Studies. So my first role after my PhD program was a research support coordinator at the Center for Latino Health Research Opportunities under the supervision of Dr. Victoria Bahar-Susman. I really applied for this position and I wanted to be at this center because it was focused on health research related specifically to the Hispanic population. And I really wanted to focus on that. That was my focus. And I wanted to be in an environment where I can expand my research. Additionally, the work that I did here with Dr. Bahar-Susman, she worked very closely with Dr. Guillermo Prado, who is my current mentor in my postdoc. And she, because of her collaboration with Dr. Prado, I was really able to support her as a research support coordinator, but I was also able to spend some time in developing a federally funded diversity supplement to fund my own postdoc position. And so I was able to really work on that and submit it and get it funded, and then have the liberty to do my own research during my postdoc. Because I wrote a federally funded diversity supplement, there are specific aims that I have to address during my postdoctoral tenure. So I work on those on the side, but one of the greatest projects I've been able to work on is this intervention development that Dr. Prado has kind of made the forefront of what our team is working on. We're developing an intervention for a specific set of Hispanic populations, and it's really been interesting because I've really been able to participate in all aspects of the intervention development, from the very beginning, the fundamentals, the pilot study, the qualitative interviews to develop the components, to now assessing the feasibility, the acceptability, and the primary efficacy of this intervention. So I've really been able to play a role in all the different stages of an intervention development. And as a researcher, that in the future, I hope to develop my own interventions for my own populations to address mental health and suicide and these type of health outcomes in Hispanic populations. This was one of the greatest experiences because you really get this firsthand experience. And I think that my PhD program was fundamental to being successful and contributing to the team during this time, because the coursework, especially, I took program planning, I took theoretic theories of health behavior. All these different courses gave me, the baseline level of knowledge that I needed to be able to contribute in different ways, but also the skills of thinking critically. I think one of the best skills that I got during my doctoral program was getting trained to think critically about a problem, being able to assess what is missing, gaps in the literature, things like that. So I think overall, my doctoral program really helped me in being able to be a part of this team and, not just being a spectator. I think one of the best strategies, and I think I have two. So two of the best strategies that I got from my doctoral program to help me be really successful at what I do now is one, to practice my writing. Pretty much 75% of what I do in my postdoc involves writing abstracts, writing publications, contributing to writing grants, things like that. And practicing my writing in my doctoral program was imperative. I had to learn how to write academically. Sometimes it's a challenge coming from the master's program, where maybe you don't get as much practice writing. You really have to learn there's a structure to academic writing, and you really have to learn that. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes kind of second nature, and you can focus more on the science instead of getting caught up in how do I write this in a paper. And likewise, practicing my writing, but also reading a lot of research, like reading a lot of research specific in my research area, making sure that I stay current and like what's the most, what are the most recent methodological approaches, what's new in the research, the prevalence, the epidemiology of anything that I'm currently working on. Making time to read these articles is something, it's like a skill that I picked up in my doctoral program. And sometimes it's really hard because in a doctoral program, you're assigned a lot of reading and you get caught up in, I have to read this. And sometimes it's not as exciting because it's not what you're particularly interested in. But reading that, like you subconsciously pick up like how do people write about a problem, how do people pick up like statistical skills just from reading like the methods section of an article. So doing those two things, always practicing writing, whether it's like formally or informally, and then reading a lot of literature. And it kind of becomes fun at some point because you're reading about what you're really interested in, and you get to know who is at the forefront of your research field. Being first generation, I'm a Mexican immigrant, so I was born in Mexico, and then being a first generation college student, graduate student, I think when I was applying for grad school, it didn't really have like an effect or not like a noticeable influence. I kind of just wanted to apply to grad school, and then if I got in, I got in, and if I didn't, I would find like another path. So in that way, I kind of just had lower expectations for myself, and I think maybe it was subconsciously did have an influence, but not like noticeably to myself. But definitely when I started to apply for postdocs or when I was looking for a postdoc position, it had a huge influence. At this point, I realized, I wanted to be in a place where I was represented in higher education. And even though, my mentors at UT and in health ed and kinesiology, they were great. Dr. Alex Lucas was the most supportive mentor I could have had. I wanted to go to a place where I was more represented. So in the higher, more senior faculty. And I think that's one of the reasons that I wanted to come to the University of Miami, because a lot of the faculty are of Hispanic descent. The population is just majority Hispanic. So that had like a huge influence. My background and being first generation, I knew I could leverage that in applying for different diversity supplements. My diversity supplement is centered around me being a female, first generation Mexican immigrant. That's one of the reasons that I got the diversity supplement, but also just being surrounded by people that represented myself. I think I needed that, so I knew that I could be successful. I needed to see my background being represented. So in a place where everyone is kind of Hispanic, and even in the city of Miami, you walk into a store and everybody just starts talking to you in Spanish if you look somewhat Hispanic or of Hispanic descent. And it felt very welcoming, I think. And I immediately felt in a welcoming environment and at home. And it wasn't hard to make connections because everybody is kind of doing similar research. I mean, we're doing different research. Some people are doing mental health, some people are doing cancer, but a majority of us are focusing on the Hispanic population because it's such a huge part of Miami. And so it's easy to collaborate with other people. I think that helped a lot. I've made a lot of connections down here. And I think it's a skill that I've learned now. Now I can go anywhere. I think I can go to anywhere, Texas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, North Dakota, and I can not feel afraid to make those connections to people that are doing similar work, or I can be an advocate for this research and say, even if this population is very small in like a particular area, it's very important. And I think that's one of the things that I learned here specifically, like you have to be an advocate for your research, regardless of really where you are. One of the greatest pieces of advice I got during my doctoral program was to not be afraid to make a connection or to not be afraid to reach out to someone, emailing them and asking them for anything really, regardless of my status or their status, whether I'm a graduate student and they're full-time or like a full professor at a different university, like to not be afraid to do that. Because I think I was innate, like just by nature, I'm more of an introvert, and it takes effort to like reach out to people. But had I not learned that, I wouldn't have reached out to Dr. Prado, who is my current mentor now, and asked him, like, I just want to work with you. Like, I really wanted to work with him, and I wanted to get mentoring on family interventions, and he's an expert in that. And to me, it meant, traveling like half across the country and hoping that this person was willing to mentor me. But I did, and like the worst thing that could happen is that they say no. And then you kind of just move on. But the best thing that could happen is that they say yes, and you move half across the country and get like a great experience in your postdoc. Like you become like, just personally for me, I think I became like more secure in who I am as a researcher. But I think that's like one of the main, career advice I would give to people. I just do not be afraid to reach out. I would reach out to anybody. If you read an article or if you see someone that's doing the research that you want to do, I would definitely reach out to them and just ask them, hey, can I work on this project, or can keep me in mind if anything comes up? Then they'll remember, I think. And that's definitely something that I always think about all the time.